There's a reason the most intense love you've ever felt might have also been the most painful. Not in spite of the pain, possibly because of it. And there's a neurological explanation for that. One that has nothing to do with being broken or naive, or someone who doesn't know what love is. Most explanations of trauma bonding start with a list of signs. They tell you what it looks like from the outside. This one starts somewhere different. It starts with what it actually feels like from the inside, and works backward from there to the mechanism that produces it. Because the mechanism is the part that changes everything. Not what you should have done, what was already happening before you had a choice. Let's begin with what it actually feels like. There's a specific quality to this kind of connection that is almost impossible to describe to someone who hasn't felt it. It isn't just that you love them. It's that the connection feels more real than other connections you've had. More alive. More urgent. You've probably had relationships that were calmer. Safer. With people who were actually available. And you probably noticed, with some confusion, that those didn't feel like this. The absence of chaos felt like the absence of something important. Like the signal was too quiet, like it couldn't be real love if it didn't feel like this. And then there's the other side of it, the specific misery of waiting for a message that may or may not come. The hypervigilance, reading tone in a single word, analyzing what a delay means, preparing for the withdrawal before it happens. The way their mood becomes the weather system you live inside. And when they come back, when the warmth returns after the cold, the relief is so complete, it almost erases what just happened. Almost. Here's the part that doesn't get said about this. You've probably tried to explain this to someone, a friend, a therapist, someone who loves you and wants you to just leave. And they don't understand why you can't. Not really, because from the outside, the math is simple. This person hurts you, you leave. From the inside, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like leaving would mean losing the most real thing you've ever had. And the shame of that, the shame of knowing the logic and still feeling this way, is its own separate weight. This video is not going to add to that weight. Now let's talk about what's actually happening underneath all of this. Here is what's actually happening. And this is the part that most explanations of trauma bonding skip or mention so briefly it doesn't land. The brain has a reward system built around dopamine. And dopamine, contrary to what most people assume, is not primarily the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of anticipation. Research on reward circuitry, going back to Skinner's work on variable reinforcement schedules and confirmed repeatedly in more recent neuroscience, shows something specific. The dopamine system responds most intensely not to consistent reward, but to unpredictable reward. A slot machine produces more dopamine activation than a vending machine, not because the slot machine gives more, because you don't know when it's going to give it all. Now apply that to a relationship where warmth and coldness alternate without a predictable pattern, where the affection comes and then withdraws, and then comes back in a way you can't anticipate or control. Your brain is not reading that as chaos. Your brain is reading that as high stakes. And high stakes, to the dopamine system, is chemically identical to high value. That's the first part of the mechanism. The second part involves a different system entirely. When the person withdraws, your body registers something close to threat. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises. The nervous system goes into a version of alert. And then when they return, when the warmth comes back, the relief that follows is accompanied by a surge of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Stress, then relief. Cortisol, then oxytocin. Repeated, unpredictably, over time. What that cycle produces, neurologically, is an attachment that your brain cannot distinguish from love. Not a confusion of love, not a lesser version of love. The same neurochemical experience, generated by a completely different mechanism. You didn't mistake this for love because something is wrong with your perception. Your brain produced love because that is what this specific pattern of experience triggers in the human nervous system. That is not a character flaw. That is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. But there's a deeper layer to this that explains why this pattern takes hold so completely in some people. Here is the part that doesn't get said. Trauma bonding doesn't activate equally in everyone. It tends to take hold most completely in people whose earliest experiences of attachment were also unpredictable. Not necessarily dramatic. Not necessarily what anyone would call traumatic from the outside. Sometimes just inconsistent. A caregiver who was warm and then withdrawn. Love that felt conditional in ways that were never explained. The experience, early enough that it had no language yet, of not being sure whether the person who was supposed to be there would be there, when that's what attachment felt like in the beginning. The nervous system builds its map of love from those coordinates. And the map says, this is what love feels like. Uncertain, intense, requiring constant attention. The relief when it arrives makes the waiting worth it. So when this person, this adult, this relationship produces that same pattern, your nervous system doesn't read it as danger. It reads it as familiar. And familiar, to a nervous system that was shaped by early inconsistency, doesn't mean safe. It means known. And known, when consistent safety was never fully available, registers as the closest thing to it. This is the part that makes the intensity make sense. You weren't just bonding to this person. You were completing a pattern your nervous system has been running since before you had words for it. The reason they felt like home, even when home was painful, is that they felt like the emotional architecture you grew up inside. That is not a verdict about your judgment. That is a record of what you survived, what you felt was real, what it was built from. That's what we're looking at now, what you learned, not who you are. If what this video is describing is something you're living right now or something you keep returning to even after you thought you'd moved past it, there's a resource in the description built specifically for this moment. Not for when you're calm and thinking clearly, for the moment the pull comes back and the knowing isn't enough. It's called the From Knowing to Doing Guide. 7 tools designed to work at the level of the nervous system, not the level of the intellect. Because that's the level where this actually lives. Link is in the description and the pinned comment. So what can actually interrupt a mechanism that operates beneath the level of thought? Here is what this video is not going to do. It's not going to tell you to just decide to leave, or to love yourself more, or to remember your worth. You probably already know the logical version of what to do here. That knowledge is real. It just doesn't reach the part of you that's running this. What this section is about is something different. What can actually interrupt a mechanism that operates beneath the level of thought? The first thing that helps is naming the neurological state precisely in real time. Not, I need to stop this. Not, I know this is bad for me. Something more like, my dopamine system is in anticipation mode right now. This craving I'm feeling is chemically identical to withdrawal. That's what this is. That sounds clinical, it's meant to. Because the precision of that language, when you practice it, creates a small gap between the feeling and the behavior. Not a wall, not a resolution, a gap. 3 seconds wide. That gap is where a choice begins to exist. The second thing that helps is interrupting the cortisol-oxytocin loop itself. The cycle is activated by threat, then relief. Your nervous system has learned to seek that relief from this specific person. What begins to decouple that association is giving the nervous system non-relational sources of the same neurological relief. Movement, breath, cold water, physical regulation. Not as a replacement for the relationship, as evidence repeated enough times that relief is available from somewhere other than them. The nervous system updates through repetition, not through insight. The third thing, the one that takes longest but matters most, is what researchers who study attachment call earned security. It's the slow accumulation of experiences where the absence of unpredictability doesn't feel like the absence of love. You don't get there by deciding to trust someone safer. You get there by accumulating moments, small ones, where someone is consistent, and your nervous system notices that nothing terrible happened, that the quiet felt like quiet, not like the silence before the withdrawal. This pattern is interrupted by giving the nervous system a different experience, not a better argument. One moment of clarity doesn't rewrite the map, but repeated moments of different experience begin to. That is not a fast process. And that is not a failure. The map was drawn over years. Updating it takes time, and the repetition of something your nervous system hasn't encountered in this territory before. Consistency, without the cost. If you want something concrete for the moments when this video's explanation isn't enough, when your nervous system has already taken over, the From Knowing to Doing guide is in the description. 7 tools for exactly those moments. Link is there and in the pinned comment. Was there a moment, not when you understood this intellectually, but when you actually felt it? When the pull came back and you couldn't explain why? Drop it in the comments. Here's what you walked into this video carrying. The belief, maybe not spoken, maybe never fully formed into words, that the intensity of what you felt for someone who hurt you was evidence of something wrong with your emotional wiring, that you loved the wrong way, that you couldn't tell the difference, that the compass was broken. What the evidence actually shows, when you look at the mechanism rather than the moral, is something completely different. Your brain produced an attachment that felt indistinguishable from love because the neurological conditions for that experience were present. Intermittent reinforcement, the cortisol-oxytocin cycle. The activation of the oldest attachment map your nervous system holds. The intensity wasn't evidence of something broken in you. It was evidence of how precisely your nervous system was doing its oldest job. The job it learned before it had language, before it had any framework other than stay close to the one who matters, even when staying close hurts. That job kept you connected to someone important when you were too small to do anything else. It's just still running. In a context where you are no longer that small, and where you now have options that didn't exist then. What you walked into this video believing was that the pattern was a verdict. What the mechanism actually shows is that the pattern is a record of what your nervous system learned, in the conditions it was given, with the information it had. Those are two completely different things. A verdict is permanent. A record is history. And a history, unlike a verdict, can be added to, not erased, not rewritten. Added to, with different experience, with repetition of what the nervous system hasn't had enough of yet, with time that moves in a direction the old map didn't know was possible. You are not what the bond made you feel like you were. You are someone whose nervous system learned something very early and has been loyal to that learning ever since. That loyalty is not your flaw. It's where the work begins.